Hey everyone, welcome back to the latest video. This video is going to be the Gameweek 2 team selection, so we're going to have a look at how the team's looking, captaincy, any transfers, and all the other things that come alongside with it. And we'll also have a look at how the Gameweek 1 team performed as well. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so just having a look at the team then. Roofs obviously in Sunderland, lost Ipswich 2-1, disappointing performance. I did think Sunderland could have kept a clean sheet. Maybe I was being a bit optimistic with that and just maybe overbearing for last season's performance a little bit. They were obviously, Roofs was close to keeping 2 points. Conceded that late goal in the 90th minute because of an Alderete mistake. So yeah, obviously disappointing. And Brobby as well. He had 2 good chances, one in the first half, one in the second half. Both were blocked. Maybe it could have been a different performance if he was to repeat that again, and maybe could have scored. I still think it was the correct decision to go with Brobby and Roofs, but yeah, obviously Ipswich just performed better than simply we expected. He weren't the only promoted side to do that. However, Arsenal defence, triple up there, very good. Mosquera and Gabriel both keeping clean sheets. Obviously, Gabriel got that yellow card, so, lost the point there. 8 million, maybe expected a bit more. Potentially, DEFCON amongst one of them would have been nice, but obviously at home to Coventry, don't really expect it because Arsenal were in control of the ball so much. Ben White, on the other hand, though, an assist. Odegaard goal, yeah, really good. A little bit jammy how it went in. Odegaard miskicked it, but, a goal's a goal. We'll take those. No complaints there. Now, obviously, moving on to Manchester United, really disappointing. And the triple up, irrespective of how I would have done it, never worked. Maguire, although he did seem to be getting some more attacking positions and he had a good couple of crosses, I think particularly one to Dorgu in the first half. And, well, what happens when you play a left back as a left winger? He obviously missed the target. Bruno Fernandes and Mbeumo, I don't regret going with both of these. I still think it was the right decision to do that. Obviously, captaining Bruno Fernandes, well, it didn't really matter if you went Bruno Fernandes or Haaland. They both got the same points in Gameweek 1. So, yeah, whatever. I mean, sometimes you'll kick yourself about it, but I think it was still the right decision to go with triple Man United, even away at a newly promoted side. And I think the underlying stats as well. I mean, Man United outperformed Hull on XG. Obviously, Hull scored 2 goals and Man United scored 0. But I think it's still the correct decision. And in Mbeumo performance well, also just have a look at his performance for that game. 0.5 XG, 0.23 expected assists. He was expected almost to return something. And actually watching the game, Mbeumo wasn't particularly bad. I'd be more concerned about Bruno Fernandes. I mean, only 0.08 expected goals against Hull, 0.26 expected assists. It's just not really good. That's the main concern. I mean, Harry Maguire outperformed Bruno Fernandes for expected assists. Harry Maguire at 0.4. So, yeah, maybe something to learn there, but we won't chop and change for Game Week 2. Let's just keep with it. Now, obviously, moving on to the Liverpool pairing, Wirtz, Szoboszlai, and Virgil van Dijk. Well, a little bit of a similar story to Man United, apart from Szoboszlai, obviously, in the last seconds, got that penalty and scored it. Really good. I was pretty confident that Szoboszlai was the penalty taker for Liverpool, and that's why I went with him. And I just think in the 98th minute, away at Newcastle on the first game of the season, if you're not prepared to take that penalty because you just simply don't have the confidence, then you are not going to be the main penalty taker. And what I mean by that is the pressure there, you are the penalty taker if you're taking it. You're the one who can stomach it. And I think Szoboszlai will be the penalty taker. Potentially Isak might take a penalty down the line, but I just think the probability Szoboszlai takes the next penalty probably at 80% plus. But that's why we went for it. That's why we paid 7 million for a 90-minute man in Szoboszlai, because he's always on the pitch, and irrespective of when that penalty or when that scenario happens, he'll be there and he might be involved. And that's exactly why you go for these 90-minute players like Szoboszlai. Less said about Florian Wirtz. I think he got subbed off in the 63rd minute, so quite disappointing. He did have a half a chance, 0.26 XG. Gravenberch maybe could have passed to him for the first goal that Newcastle scored. Yes, maybe clutching it at the strings there, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe want to consider on the wildcard free whether we actually want to keep Wirtz or we want to move him off. Let's see what happens in Game Week 2 in terms of the minutes, and we'll readjust there. Calvert-Lewin, another disappointing one really. Only 1 point because he got a yellow card, even though he played the full game. Obviously, Leeds won, but it was an Anton Stack free kick. Yeah, a little bit disappointing, but he's owned by, what, 30% of managers, so it wasn't a massive loss there, and there certainly wasn't any gain, so not too bad. But my other striker, João Pedro, he did really good. Now, I watched the game last night, Chelsea-Fulham, and it's fair to say that the Chelsea attack looked really promising, and there's definitely players there we want to be considering this season. The Chelsea defence, on the other hand, particularly Robert Sanchez, is probably going to be one to avoid unless they make some significant changes before the transfer window ends. But yeah, I'm really glad I went for João Pedro. I just thought, because of his ownership, I think it's over 60%, 65%. Based on his preseason form, I was pretty confident he was going to get a goal or at least an assist. And obviously, he got a goal and an assist. And yeah, 11 points. That's probably the difference between me saying this first game week was a success and this first game week was a failure. So really happy. And then the last two players, Bart Verbruggen, clean sheet for Brighton. So really happy there. I mean, no one really expected Villa to be that bad, I don't think, but they were pretty horrific. I mean, some of the mistakes they were making were basic, and that gave Hinshelwood 2 goals pretty quick on. Obviously, João Gomez just lost his head, kicked out, red card. So by that point, I was pretty confident Brighton were going to keep the clean sheet. I didn't want to get too cocky about it, though, because I just thought, well, it's only going to take one chance and that could still be wiped out. But really glad, 6 points, that's nice and easy. And then the third best player of this game week was Iliman Ndiaye, Everton. Now, he got a clean sheet, an assist, DEFCON, and some bonus points. And there are some people saying his assist was a bit fluky. He probably shouldn't have got it because apparently when Barry headed it, well, he did head it against the back of Chris Richards and it went into the net, but the camera angle wasn't so obvious whether he was going necessarily wide or if he was still on target. So, yeah, maybe I've been a bit lucky there, but I think Ndiaye, we know he's a 90-minute man. He can't get DEFCON. He got an assist as he can do. Really happy there. And overall, that meant the bench boost got, 19 points. So yeah, a successful bench boost as well. Pretty happy with that. Obviously, the captaincy, not so good, but we'll have a look at the Gameweek 2 team selection and consider how we maybe want to change that going forwards. Okay, so next part of the video, I'm going to be answering some of your questions that you sent in on Twitter. I'll just give my thoughts on what you should be doing ahead of the Gameweek 2 deadline. So the first question is from FPL Midas, and he's asking whether triple Arsenal is viable against Aston Villa. Now, obviously, Aston Villa lost 4-0 against Brighton. There was no attacking output, and the defence was horrific, basically. I think my thoughts are that you could potentially, yeah, sure, maybe play double Arsenal defence. Certainly, if you've got Gabriel, you'd be playing Gabriel. And one of Ben White, Calafiori, and Mosquera. Yeah, I'd also consider maybe playing with that. I still think that the way most people have set their Game Week 1 teams up to have a Man United defender such as Harry Maguire or Dalot or Luke Shaw, I'd still play that defender. And if you've got a third defender such as a Tarkowski, a Van Dijk, yeah, I'd play them. I probably wouldn't be playing a Brighton defender, even if it's Maxime de Kuiper after his 17-pointer against Villa. I'd be benching him because it's against Chelsea. But sure, an Arsenal double up in defence is viable. Probably something I'll be considering, as I'll show you in a minute, whether playing Gabriel and Ben White as well. But I think it's viable. Let's just see what maybe Aston Villa do before the deadline if they bring any reinforcements into their squad. Okay, and the second question is about Elliot Anderson and what maybe you should do with him. Now, for context, he was subbed off early in the game against Bournemouth. And after the game, Maresca said that it was already really cramped that Elliot Anderson occurred. Now, obviously, just be careful and let's see what happens in the press conference before the Game Week 1 deadline. A little bit more information about Elliot Anderson, his fitness. The question particularly here was maybe if you should be bringing an attacking midfielder like Odegaard. Now, obviously, Odegaard scored against Coventry in the Game Week 1 fixture. Whether he'll necessarily play in Game Week 2, yeah, I'm pretty confident that he will probably start. But obviously, let's just bear in mind they'll have Rice, Zubimendi, Miles Skelly, potentially Bruno Guimaraes. I'm not really too sure what his injury status is there. But there's definitely competition for space, and I don't think right now you should be using that one free transfer on bringing a player in who might not start Game Week 2, and certainly isn't a definite after that. So as I say, let's just see what Maresca says about Elliot Anderson. He was taking corners from the left-hand side, so I think he's definitely going to be an essential player if he's going to be playing. And his DEFCON was keeping in line. He was making lots of recoveries as well. So I think if he definitely played on the 90 minutes, you could extrapolate what he achieved in his, I think it's about 65, 70 minutes he played. You could extrapolate that, and I think he'd definitely be getting DEFCON. Add that to the corners as well, and just generally his all-round assists potential, obviously with Erling Haaland up front. I think he's definitely going to be a player to keep and consider in a wild card later on down the line. Okay, and the third question that's been sent in is about how important Chelsea assets are going to be this season. Now, obviously, we've only got one game week of information, so a very, very, very small sample size. But even from that sample size, if we just have a think about it, Cole Palmer particularly looks good. Now, obviously, he's had pre-season to get involved with Xavi Alonso and the new squad. He wasn't involved in the World Cup, so he's had plenty of time to rest and then get geared up for the start of the season. My only thing I'd be questioning about Chelsea is how good his minutes will still be. Now, he did go off with, I think, was cramp as well, a bit like Elliot Anderson. He went off in the 82nd minute, so let's just again hear from Xavi Alonso what was actually happened, whether it's an injury or just cramp. But I just think with someone like Cole Palmer, if he's definitely getting those 90 minutes week in, week out, a bit like how Bruno Fernandes was last season, sure, we can go for him, and he definitely would be important. But I just would be careful first, and let's just make sure he's getting those minutes before we necessarily substitute someone out like Bruno Fernandes for Cole Palmer. Just because we know Bruno Fernandes will probably play 90 minutes most weeks, obviously before Champions League starts. And when Champions League starts, we'll obviously have to see what sort of teams he's facing and consider that a bit more. On the other hand, players like João Pedro, certainly you can keep them for 7.5 minutes. They're nice, cheap assets to be holding on to. Morgan Rogers as well, maybe someone to be considering. Obviously started the game yesterday, did get subbed off early, but, still putting a really good performance. I just think some of the other maybe cheaper assets like Enzo Fernandez, let's not rush to get him in. Obviously, he was on the bench last night and came on. Let's make sure he's actually a Chelsea player by the end of this transfer window. Could be a Man City player. So let's just be patient there. And Chelsea defenders, I wouldn't probably really go there based on what we saw yesterday. Obviously, Lacroix did get an assist. Well, overall, their defence wasn't particularly good. I mean, obviously, it was a goalkeeper mistake for the first one. Then, yeah, probably another goalkeeper mistake for the second one. Bit of a mistake from Colwood as well. But I wouldn't rush to get any Chelsea defensive assets in. Okay, so now starting with the Game Week 2 team selection. So in goal, I'm going to start with Roofs again. Fulham at home, a better fixture than what Brighton have got, Chelsea away. So I still favour Roofs, even though they did concede 2 to Ipswich in Game Week 1. Now, defence, currently I'm penciling Gabriel, Maguire and Van Dijk. Obviously, Gabriel, 8 million. He's always going to be starting in my team, irrespective of the fixture, really. Maguire, Ipswich at home. Now, obviously, Man United conceded 2 to Hull in the first game week. But I think a home fixture against Ipswich could be more favourable. And he also put up a lot of expected assists in that first game week. So the idea is there. He could be a focal point. If he can sort of get those opportunities again, potentially could get a goal involvement and some more points. And obviously Van Dijk as well. He did get DEFCON in that first game. Now, the defence was leaky. Alanga really showed his pace against that squad. Kirkes didn't stand a chance. Van Dijk, 35 years old, particularly didn't as well. Nottingham Forest, home, might be a bit easier. But again, for his price, his DEFCON potential and his maybe goal involvements, and we're signing Van Dijk as well. Moving into midfield, Bruno Fernandes, Mbeumo, Wirtz, Szoboszlai and Njai all starting the game. I'm going to keep the captaincy with Bruno Fernandes. I still think Ipswich at home is probably the best fixture this game week, and Bruno Fernandes probably the best player you could have. Most routes to points, don't really need to explain too much more. Mbeumo, similarly, he posted up some good statistics against Hull. At Ipswich, I'm hoping he can replicate them, but this time actually get that goal involvement. Wirtz and Szoboszlai, Wirtz maybe we want to reconsider, and I'll explain that in a second with my bench decisions currently. But Szoboszlai, a 90-minute man, as we saw at the weekend, he has the penalties, free kicks, corners. I'm not really worried about him. Njai, potentially I could drop Njai here, but currently I'll keep him. DEFCON performance, probably on penalties. Away at Bournemouth, so not particularly a fantastic fixture. Bournemouth did put up a pretty good game against Man City. And obviously, if that translates to a game against Everton, we're not too sure yet. But I still like Njai, and this was something I was considering when making that Game Week 1 team, that I'd likely would be playing Njai in Game Week 2 as well. And then up front, João Pedro, Calvert-Lewin. João Pedro, I don't really need to explain too much. And Calvert-Lewin, I could potentially bench him, but at home to Brentford. Brentford are a different team away from home than they are at home. He's going to be playing 90 minutes a game probably. But on penalties, yes, something to consider. But I could bench him. Now let me explain why. Ben White, for example, as I said earlier on, you could double up on an Arsenal defence. Now, If I was to do it, probably right now on what we know, I'd be taking out Calvert-Lewin or Njai. I still think Wirtz, even though he got subbed off in the 63rd minute, is probably too good a game against Forest to put him on the bench. Now, who would I favour between Njai or Calvert-Lewin? It's hard to say, really. I mean, they're both pretty much 90-minute men. They're both on penalties. I suppose the benefit here is that Njai just has a few more routes to points. He can get that clean sheet point. He will much more likely get DEFCON as well. I probably would bench Calvert-Lewin potentially in that case then, and therefore look at something like this. Now, obviously, I've then got Verbruggen, Ben White, Brobby, and Mosquera. Now, the reason I'm going to bench Mosquera as well, I don't really need a triple up of Arsenal defence against Villa. Now, obviously, Villa did look really poor, but I still think a triple up away at home against Aston Villa, probably not the smartest thing to do. I just don't think you're hedging your risks enough there. And I think there's enough better options elsewhere on the squad to just get them involved ahead of Mosquera. Brobby, now he did get subbed off early against Ipswich, which I was slightly expecting, but I wasn't expecting him to only play 66 minutes. Only 0.3 XG, probably not on penalties. Well, he's not on penalties. There's no reason to really think that. I think he's just probably going to be an easy bench option this game week. A bit of a shame because Fulham do seem vulnerable. It was a bit of a basketball match at some points last night. Maybe Brobby could feature his way in, but just the fact he doesn't have penalties and Calvert-Lewin does means Calvert-Lewin is going to be ahead in that benching order. So it'd really just take an injury for me to adjust that pecking order. I still think Calvert-Lewin, if he starts or he's on the bench, will be ahead of Brobby. And then Mosquera as well. The simple reason again, Villa away, I'm not massively keen on putting him in. If we hear that Yuri Timber is back and available for Aston Villa, sure, I'll probably swap Mosquera and Ben White around. But then again, if we hear that Konsa could be involved, I might only play Gabriel. Probably Konsa's not going to be available. He hasn't had any preseason minutes. He's only just joined Arsenal, so I'm not really expecting anything. And I just imagine between the two clubs, there's probably sort of some gentleman agreements that Konsa wouldn't play against Villa. So yeah, probably a 4-5-1, maybe a 3-5-2. I'm not really too certain on Calvert-Lewin or Ben White, but if you check on my Twitter account just before the deadline, I'll confirm what I'm doing and let you know there. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Overall, Game Week 1 was very good. Game Week 2, hopefully can push on a little bit more. I'm currently 461k in the world, so a really good start. I expect that to probably go down a little bit because obviously I've used the bench boost and other people will catch up as they use their chips. But a good start nonetheless. Let me know in the comments below how your team performed, any big dilemmas that you have, what maybe you think about my team, maybe any changes I could make. Like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.